This podcast is brought to you in part by the support of the AMTV Patreons. Thank you. Hello everybody and welcome back to AMTV Radio. This is the podcast where I'm joined by a very special guest each time and we chat about whatever we want to, quite frankly. And today I am joined by a actor, a writer, someone who I'm sure some of you will know. I am joined by the fabulous SADIE Miller. Good morning, SADIE. How are you?
Good morning. Hi, Adam. How are you?
I'm grand, thank you. As we were just saying before we started, nice to have some sun, finally. Very nice.
Lovely.
Nice, sunny, summery weather. And yet here we are in jumpers and...
Can't break the cycle of...
I know, isn't it? It's the very, I think, British thing of we demand hot weather and then as soon as we get it, we go, nope. It's too warm, or at least that's what I'm like anyway.
Yes, definitely.
Aye, well, I'm sure, as I said, some of the audience for this show will be aware of yourself and who you are, but maybe for those one or two who aren't as familiar, do you just want to tell us a bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. So my name is SADIE Miller. I'm an actress, a writer. I'm currently playing Sarah Jane Smith for Big Finish. And aside from that, I do professional copywriting. I'm a novelist, and I also have started a spiritual coaching company during lockdown, so very busy at the moment.
Wow, that's fantastic. I mean, great that you keep him busy. I think that's the one thing I think a lot of creatives have struggled with, I think, during the last year, just staying busy with everything.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? I mean, when there's no work around, you sort of have to create it for yourself, but it's definitely been a tricky time for everyone.
Of course, yeah. Well, we will chat about a lot of that stuff. But what I wanted to start with, being an actor myself, I was really curious as to what made you want to get into this crazy old industry? Because you know, it's something when I was at school. You know, as soon as I said, I guess seriously, you know, I want to be an actor, I want to do this. You know, you get the looks from some teachers like, oh right, yeah, you wanna be. Do you know what I mean? Like, so what made you want to sort of tackle it for yourself?
Sure. Well, I think growing up around it was definitely a huge factor. I think people often go into the same business as their parents. Just it is kind of ingrained, I guess, in the DNA a little bit. But I'm sorry that your teachers and people around you weren't more supportive. I think no matter what kids want to do, I really think you should, support people and give them that opportunity to find who they want to be authentically. And even if it doesn't work out, they're much more likely to get on that right path of who they really are. And I think it's that you support.
Absolutely. I'd like to say it's getting better, because one thing I do now part-time is teach kids drama and musical theatre and stuff, and they tell me that their teachers are, supporting them in it, and I think, well, that's good. At least there seems to be a majority positive shift, which is good. Yes, so you started. You had some roles when you were very young. One of them being a Screen One film in the early '90s called Royal Celebration, which centered around the 1981 royal wedding. So, I mean, what was that like, being so young, but also being on a film set as well?
Yes, I mean, it was a great experience, and I shot it during the summer holidays. And my parents had come along and chaperone me, so. It was nice to have them there as well, and I got to work with lots of lovely actors on it. Leslie Phillips, who'd let me sit on his knee during the breaks. It was lovely, and Minnie Driver, Kenneth Cranham, Rupert Graves. So it was a really great production. Some of it was quite adult, and I think definitely for my parents, they were not really sure if they wanted me to keep that stage, and as part of the role I had to do some ballet, and so I had to go to other classes and stuff, so even for just a 2-week shoot it ended up taking quite a lot of time away from school and stuff. So I think although it was a good experience for me, I think it sort of was a full stop for my parents.
No, of course. Yeah. And I know they've I think I saw in a BBC News interview you gave some time ago, and I think they picked up on that, saying that your mum and dad were a bit unsure about certain parts. I guess the nature of the content, I suppose, for children, which is I respect that decision, because obviously it's all well and good saying, oh, you know, we need a child for whatever plot line it is, and it serves the story. But I think sometimes in this industry that, I guess, would you say it's like they forget about the child themselves, and I guess maybe the impact that could have on them outside of the filming, if that's fair to say?
I never had that experience personally, but I think I guess like the way that the industry is, that there's not always necessarily those support blocks in place, so then parents kind of have to step in.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that made me chuckle that I picked up from that interview was at that time you said you'd recently graduated from drama school and was working in a call center, which I did too. So we're living the same dream there. It's yeah, and I mean it's so funny, isn't it? I think there's still that prevailing sense of, you know, kids come to me and say, oh yeah, so I go to drama school and then I leave and then I'm straight on like the West End, and you're like, oh no, like that's oh no, that's not how it is. I mean, obviously it's something we have to do, but I mean, how did you find like that experience of it? Because call center work is interesting, if that's the right word to say, isn't it?
Well, I mean, I've always been someone, want to make my own money, and I don't really want to rely on anyone else. I think most people are the same. And I think with a creative job, whatever it is, whether it's acting, writing, directing, all facets of the industry, I think you do have to look at it as a marathon, not a sprint. And I think sometimes even people who get that success early on can have kind of a burnout.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't always start as a positive, really. And I think it's like any career, you want to look to sustain it rather than to just be a quick flash in the pan, really.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no shame in doing those like in between jobs at all, and I hope it's something. And you're right about the burnout as well. I had a friend who, when she graduated, she went straight off into an 18-month tour, which, you know, great, fantastic, but then she went straight into another job, and, you know, a few years on, she just, like you're saying, it's that burnout feeling because you haven't had time to, I guess, ground yourself or like settle anywhere. Yeah. So it's a mixed bag, but I think the sustaining angle's the best way to do it. But yeah, I just found it funny. I was like, oh, it's not just me who worked at the call center. Like, it is
no,
true.
Definitely not.
So, there's many of us who do it. So, I mean, you've already talked a little bit about your mum and dad, who of course were actors, Elizabeth Sladen and Brian Miller. And as you say, it's sort of maybe ingrained in the DNA when your parents are actors and think, oh, I'd want to do that as well. So you say they were supportive when you said, oh, I want to give this a try as well. They weren't like, no, don't do what we did, sort of thing.
I mean, I don't know really. I think they did consciously try and steer me away from it, and they wanted me to go to university before I went to drama school, which sure. I did. Even though for me, I didn't really think that university was a necessary experience. I personally don't think. I think if you're academic or want to go into a very definite career path, say law or medicine, I think further education has a definite place. But you know, I think you try and do what your parents want. At least I always have. I don't know about everyone else, but I always try to respect their decisions and let them, at least in that initial stage, kind of dictate the path to go down.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, no, I probably agree with you in the same view. Like I did drama school as well, and it's. Yeah, I think if you feel that's the right place for you, which I felt it was, then that's the thing to go for. Absolutely, and I guess the earliest time a lot of people who maybe watched this show would have seen you was in 30 Years in the TARDIS, when you popped up in bless you, your mum's Andy Pandy outfit, as it's referred to lovingly these days. When you were involved in that then, because obviously now, as you said, you've worked with Big Finish, you've had involvement in the Doctor Who universe, if you like. As a kid, were you sort of aware how big this thing was and the part that your mum especially, of course, played within it?
Sure. I mean, I think it wasn't until I went to school and you kind of hear other kids talk about it that I realised how big it was. Because even when you go to the conventions, it can feel a little niche sometimes, and it can feel very separate from the rest of your life and sort of personal identity for your parents and stuff. But I think it was definitely starting primary school, and you hear, you know, kids talking about it in the playground, that you realise, oh, okay, so this Doctor Who thing is perhaps a bit bigger than I thought.
Maybe a little bit bigger. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And of course, eventually, you know, into the 2000s and then the 2010s, you started yourself, I suppose, dipping your toes into the the wide expanse of the Hooniverse, if that's the right thing to say. With I think some of the earlier stuff being the Sarah Jane audio series that Big Finish did back in I think 2002 and 2006. You played Natalie Redfern. It's a great little series for anyone who hasn't listened to it. It is still available on the Big Finish website for you to download. So yeah, how was that? You wanted to get involved with that, or did they ask you? So how did that opportunity come around, I suppose?
So I was still in high school, so it was something that my mum offered to me if I wanted to be involved with it. But I don't know who decided it, if it was mum or if it was someone at Big Finish who suggested it. I don't know who I have to thank for that. But yeah, that was really awesome. Obviously, getting to work with my mum and seeing what she did best. And Big Finish is a little family, really. It's such a lovely atmosphere, and they had a really nice studio. I think it was called The Moat in Brixton, kind of behind this sort of walled garden, and it felt sort of like stepping into another world, really, not just stepping into the recording box. So that was a really fun time.
Yeah, it looks fantastic. I remember all like the old liners in the CD notes, and you'd look at the pictures in this walled garden, like you say, I'd be like, where on earth is that? Like, that's not a recording studio. But no, it looked fantastic, absolutely. And in the early 2010s, you started getting into writing as well. You know, you've written all sorts, like short stories, some novellas, things like that. So what made you want to, I guess, sort of shift gears and have a go at writing? Because I think some actors take to it really easily. I know, whereas for me, I know it's something I'd love to do, but I feel like there's some invisible obstacle that prevents me from doing it. So what made you want to, I guess, change gears?
Sure. I mean, just to touch on what you were saying there for a minute, I think everyone has these limiting beliefs that we put in front of ourselves, you know, the kind of self-saboteur that sort of talks in the background and tells you that you can't do something. And I do think it's so important to just, you know, say thank you for sharing, but push that to one side, because I do think if you're a creative person, I think you have the access to that creativity, but in so many different mediums, and you shouldn't hold yourself back from anything. I mean, I've always, you know, been one of those kids, you know, writing and stuff since I was very, very little. I was enjoyed creative writing at school, and I just started to take it a bit more seriously, really, and get involved with other editors and have people look at my work on a more sort of mentor basis to try and see what I could do with it, really. And I do really enjoy it, and that's something I would definitely like to pursue further. I'm trying to concentrate on it more at the moment, but it's writing, I think the one drawback of it is that it can be quite laborious and time consuming, so you really have to be strict blocking out that time to get it done.
Yeah, absolutely. I admire all, like, you know, the novelists or the playwrights who can seemingly, when you look at like the dates of publication, they seem to crack them out like every 6 months. It's like, how on earth, like, what else do you do?
Totally.
Yeah, absolutely. One of them that when I was just out having a dig around trying to see if I could find anything, you got some positive attention for a short story, I believe you did, called Scarborough in July. That's one of yours. And just, I guess, tell us a bit about that, because I love a good short story, me. And Scarborough's a lovely place, despite what anyone says.
Oh, it's gorgeous, isn't it? I've not been back for ages. I would love to go again at some point. So that was for a Scott Harrison anthology. I have to admit, when it's the same with acting, once I've written something, it's almost as if my brain kind of ticks it off a list, and all the memory of writing it goes into a box somewhere that I can no longer access. And I feel the same about, I don't know if you do, sort of when people say, oh, how do you get into a character? How do you prepare for a role? Honestly, I don't really know. Like, it just sort of, the little synapses in your brain just sort of speak to each other differently, and you kind of make it happen, really. So I know that's not a very helpful answer.
No, it's okay. I completely understand and sympathize with what you say there. Like, you know, someone will say, oh, you know, you said you played this role like 3-4 years ago. How'd you do it? And you're like, I just did. I learned the lines, I did the work, I came in. You know, it is a weird one, I think, with creatives. You're very much right. It is that tick box style sort of thing. Like, right, I've done that now. Very much onto the next thing. I think it has to be. I think if you kind of dwell on things that you've
created or finished in the past, I think you start to either become a bit self-referential, which isn't good, or you start to become very self-critical, which also isn't very helpful. So I think everything you do, whether you feel pleased with it or not at the end of it, is a learning experience of any kind. So I always try and keep my focus on what's coming.
Absolutely.
Not what's been. It can be hard though.
Oh, absolutely. That probably explains why when you say to writers, like one of their older works, and you say, "Oh, that was really good," and they go, "Oh, thank you very much," it's because they, as you say, they haven't got the full expanse of how they crafted it. They're just like, "Oh, great, you liked it. That's cool. Thank you very much."
Thanks.
Yeah. And on the writing front, for anyone who might not be aware, I'm sure some will be. You have also written for the as I keep saying, the wide expanse of the Hooniverse. You wrote a Lethbridge Stewart novel some years ago called Moonblink. Was that something you sought out? You said, "Hey, can I be involved in this?" Or did they reach out to you? Just how did that come about, I suppose?
Again, I can't actually remember. I can't remember if I emailed Andy Frankenmallen that runs Candy Jar, or if he contacted me. I can't remember. But that was great fun. And obviously that was my first experience of really having to write to a deadline for a novel word count.
Yes.
And I was pregnant as well at the time. So it was quite a full-on period of time, but it was a great learning experience. And I would love to work for Andy again at some point. Hopefully we'll have some stuff in the work again soon. But just with writing at the minute, I do find it's the one sort of Achilles heel where it's just the time factor. Really, it is really tricky to not just to write something, but to edit it and get it to that point where you feel you want someone else to even read it or glance at it.
No, absolutely. And again, massive respect to it. And I think a lot of writers have, like when lockdown happened last year, I think, initially, I think all creatives sort of thought, "Oh, great, that project, we've had on the back burner, we can do it now. We've got the time." And then for one reason or another, it just hasn't been. But that's okay, we can still do it. But it is interesting how when we're gifted with more time, there's always something else that seems to appear. But absolutely.
Definitely. And I think obviously I have two young kids, and that I think again I think before you have children you don't realize how much free time you have, and then once you do have children it definitely changes the timetable of your life, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Like we have sometimes when the parents come and drop because some of the kids we teach are quite young. And they're like, thanks for bringing them along. And they look at you, and and they're going, "Oh, well, it's them out the house for 3 hours, isn't it?" And I'm like, "Oh, right." And they don't mean it in an awful way. They just mean it as, I just want 3 hours to have a cup of tea, sit down, just sit back in a chair. So, but hey, you love them, don't you? That's part of the journey. So bringing it all the way up to Big Finish, which is where, again, you've been very prevalent recently. You've taken on the role of Sarah Jane Smith in Return of the Cybermen and The Gulf, which for many fans has been so exciting because obviously and quite respectfully, Big Finish hasn't touched Sarah Jane in many a year, of course. So again, did they reach out to you and say, "Hey, do you fancy taking it on?" Did the time feel right, I suppose?
Yeah, so I had an email from the producer, David Richardson, asking if I would be interested in doing Return of the Cybermen. And then when we got down to the studio to do the recording, they kind of said to me that they were looking to do some more Sarah adventures. And obviously I was very surprised, but very delighted. And I really obviously have a lot of respect for the way that Big Finish have gone about it so sensitively, and starting with a lost story before kind of bringing in a new adventure. But it's just been a wonderful adventure so far, and I feel so lucky to get to go on these adventures, really.
Yeah, and I mean the two well, at the time of recording, the two that are out so far, I mean Return of the Cybermen, which for anyone who doesn't know is I believe the original script version of what is Revenge of the Cybermen on TV. It's wonderful. What was it like working with Tom Baker with his lovely?
Oh, it was lovely, and obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but we recorded it in November 2019, so you could actually sort of touch people, well, obviously appropriately touch, but you could kind of sit near to people, and it was so.
You could give each other a hug if you wanted to.
Yes, it was lovely, and have that kind of proximity. I don't know about you, obviously being like an actor as well, but I love just being in a rehearsal room with people and just having that collaborative feel. It's the most wonderful energy, and we obviously record now at home and stuff, and you do still get an element of that for sure. But yeah, it was lovely. And Tom is a very generous actor and very, very clever, and he knows exactly what to do for the Doctor, and not just as a performance, but also what people want from him, which I think is a very delicate balance, and he does it so effortlessly. So
yeah.
I admire him hugely.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think in many ways he is his Doctor. Just his personality is so wonderful and so eccentric. I think he's just very much playing himself in a good way. You know, I think a lot of people see that. And I mean, we've seen you with Tom before as well on the for those who have been getting the classic series on Blu-ray, you were on the Behind the Sofa featurette for season 12, which I love those features. It's just great seeing different creatives who have their involvement with the show just watch these older episodes, and you know, sometimes like, oh, that's really good, and sometimes they go, oh, that's that, and then you just have fun along the way. So again, was that the production team reached out to you and said, would you be interested in, I guess, sitting down with Tom, and it was Philip as well, wasn't it? Philip Hinchcliffe.
Yeah, Tom and Tom Baker, Philip Hinchcliffe. Yes, I think that was, I think it was Brian Minchin. Oh no, maybe it wasn't him. I'm so sorry, I'm terrible.
It's okay, don't worry.
Yeah, so someone reached out to me from the BBC to ask if I'd be interested in doing it, and obviously it sounded like great fun. Maybe it was Andrew Beach, actually.
Okay.
I can't remember. I'm so sorry. I'm terrible at this kind of stuff. But it was lovely, but very intimidating as well, though, sitting between, you know, Tom and Philip, who were there at the time. And there's me kind of in the middle, sort of trying to think, like, what did Mum tell me about this? And trying to not say all the stuff that I know she wouldn't want me to say or point out or whatever. So, yeah, it was great fun. And it's just that energy, isn't it, when you're in a room with people of that caliber, that you think, wow, you know, I'm so lucky to be here, and I just want to drain all the juice of this situation and keep it in my memory bank.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, in those featurettes, you do share some wonderful stories that your mum's passed down to you about her time working on the show. And I think it's just, again, as you say, it's really special to see the three of you not just reminisce about this show, but also, I think, you know, visibly enjoy what you're watching, you know, showing that this show still has its appeal all these years later, whether it's the performances or the monsters or the settings or whatever. It is truly wonderful. And the other, as we mentioned, the other Big Finish project you've done recently as Sarah was The Gulf, with Tim Treloar as the third Doctor. And I must say, and it's been said, I'm beating a dead horse here because it's been said many times before. With Tim, you know, when you start listening to him, after about 2 minutes, you forget it's someone else, and you think, oh yeah, it's John Pertwee in a booth doing the audio. Did you have that experience as well when you were doing it? Did you sort of forget after a while?
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, Tim and I have never actually met. I've only ever recorded with him remotely.
Oh, okay.
So for me, it was really easy to just close my eyes. And as you say, it's John, you know, he's so clever. And I think Tim is so clever as well in the fact that he doesn't just do sort of an impersonation of Pertwee. He really kind of layers in his own performance as the Doctor as well, which I think is fab. So I'm a big fan of Tim.
Yeah. No, his work's fantastic. And again, for anyone who hasn't heard them, the Return of Simon and the Gulf, you can download or buy on CD from Big Finish. I highly recommend it. And I mean, your compliments to Tim, I do want to extend to you as well, because, you know, you're not... No, it's true, because like you're not just doing... I feel you're not just doing, you know, an impression of what your mum did. You're taking what she gave to the part, but then also adding your own layer on it. And very much the same with Tim. After a while of listening to The Gulf, I forget that, you know, it's Sarah, it's there. So I just, you know, it's fantastic work, Sadie, honestly. I really did enjoy both of those stories, and I hope
that's so kind.
I hope there's more to come. I really, really do.
Oh, thank you.
Not a problem at all. Is it, if you don't mind me asking, I'm sure it must have been a bit, well, I mean, was it odd at first starting playing Sarah, given that, as you've said, you know, that was very intrinsically what your mum, I suppose, gave to Doctor Who. You know, she was Sarah Jane, both in the classic series and the modern series. Was it a bit, were you daunted at all, or were you like, no, I can do this, you know?
Oh no, I mean, the first day, absolutely just shitting myself. I was so nervous because it's not just obviously taking on such an iconic role, but also because I hadn't done anything for such a long time. I thought, oh God, you know, and there's going to be all these people there watching me and having these expectations. And what if it's awful? What if it's so bad? So I was very, very nervous. but I guess getting to do it with Tom for that first one, you kind of have that person sort of that takes your hand, metaphorically speaking, and kind of leads you the way that you're supposed to go. And Nick Briggs as well is a fantastic director. I mean, he just has that perfect balance of knowing when to push you and when to support. And I felt very safe with him. And the whole team really. So Audio Sorcery, the studio where we record, Paul that runs that as the engineer, because I think sometimes the sound engineers get forgotten on these kind of productions, and they are so integral to the feel of it and to helping you push your performance as well. So everyone was great. I'm so sorry, my table is so wobbly, I feel like we're in the TARDIS about to take off. I'm so sorry.
I'll add a sound effect underneath, just the rising TARDIS sound. It's all right. Where I sit as well, just because I like to cross my knees a lot, but it's right under a table, so I'll be editing, and then my picture will just go like that. It's like, oh, you've hit the table again, Adam. You need to stop doing that. But don't worry about it. But I must say that's one thing, because when I guess you listen to Big Finish, there's a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, and all of the actors who come in, they all sort of say that Big Finish feels like a very safe environment to both as a first timer and to like explore as well as an actor. Like, they give you the freedom to explore these characters, which I mean, ideally in a rosy world, every rehearsal room studio should feel like that. Sad reality, kids listening, it's not like that. But we can live and dream. But yeah, everyone sings their praises about Big Finish, so it sounds like a great company to be a part of and to work for as well. And it's nice to see, like you said, they handled approaching you in a sensitive manner, because they've done the same with other, characters whose original actors are sadly no longer with us, like Daisy Ashford, who's, I believe, the daughter of Caroline John, and you've got Fraser Hines doing Patrick Troughton, and Peter Purves doing William Hartnell. It's lovely to hear, and again, everyone sings Big Finish's praises about approaching it, because there is a right and wrong way to do it, isn't there? I think, about approaching actors with something like that.
Yeah, definitely. I think Big Finish overall, not to be too gushing, but I think they are just a great company overall in terms of diversity and, championing women and women writers, women directors. I just think, that they're a fantastic company, and they managed to take old Who and new Who and lots of other different stories as well, and find a way to make them fresh and exciting and push boundaries in all the right ways. So I think they're great, really, and I get excited as a fan of them myself, to see what's coming next. They're great. I think really
absolutely
great.
They are fantastic. And I suppose I would say with the legacy of the Sarah Jane character so huge that she had her own spin-off show, which must have, I guess, was your mum was she surprised by that when that came through? Because that had never, I guess, happened before, that a companion had their own spin-off show on TV as well.
No, definitely. I think she was very surprised and completely taken aback, really, but very excited. And it was definitely something that she wanted to do. I mean, when she kind of went into semi-retirement, she would always say to me, I'm going to keep myself nice, because I think at some point, I'm going to keep my hair nice, stay in shape, because at some point something's going to come up and I'm going to be needed again. Yeah. And people talk about manifesting, whatever, but I do think that she saw something for herself in the future, and then Sarah Jane Adventures came along, so it was great. And I mean, I can't remember if it was 5 years or 6 years.
About then, about 5 or 6,
Yeah, they were so happy for her, and just so wonderful, and everyone involved in that, all the crew and the cast as well. What an amazing experience to have, in her 60s. Absolutely bloody amazing. So
I mean, as well, for it to be on CBBC, and not to generalize kids at all, I think people patronize children way too much. They're a lot smarter than some people give them credit for. But, to have as you say, a woman in her 60s lead a children's show, and for it to be so universally loved by children and adults as well, I think that really speaks to not just the creation, the production of the show involved, but it also speaks to your mum's natural warmth, I suppose. Because, I mean, I found she was always a very, a very warm performer to watch. She's very inviting. She's very, I guess, accepting, if that makes sense. And I think that just translates well on kids' TV.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of the Sarah Jane Adventures had a lot kind of harking back to old style of Doctor Who stories. without maybe some of the more complex adult themes that you see in the newer series.
Sure.
And I think for some fans, they prefer that kind of storytelling as well. So I think even though it was for children, there was lots of adults watching along as well. But I think, I agree. My mum definitely was a very charismatic, warm woman, and she was someone that people were just automatically drawn to.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And I mean, since you've been immersed in or out of this Doctor Who world for a while now, you're not scared of any of the monsters now, are you? You can bat off a Dalek, bat off a Cyberman. It's all, not a problem. Or is there any that you still, as we, the old uns, as we do, say, hide behind the sofa when, or go, oh God, there's a monster,
Oh yeah, gosh. Well, I still think that Pyramids of Mars is quite scary.
Yeah.
I went to see the Tutankhamun exhibition that was on a couple of years ago, and you see, the sarcophagi, and you think, oh,
okay.
Be poking around here, and the Sutek mask, I think is very frightening. But I think sometimes as well, you watch old Doctor Who and you see the monsters and you think, this isn't scary. And then you go to an exhibition or you see someone in the suit and you think, actually, I don't think I like this Cyberman sort of clumping towards me. And even the Daleks, I think it's very sinister.
Yeah.
And Davros as well, waffling on. But I think that Davros mask is truly horrifying, really.
God,
and what it represents as a character, I think, is true horror right there.
Yeah.
So I think, Doctor is very scary.
It is. I mean, like you say, Pyramids of Mars, the one that I always remember is that cliffhanger where, the guy's got his hands on his shoulders and he's essentially scorching him to death. I mean, that's quite...
Yeah, all the smoke. Oh, it's horrible.
And the guy's like screaming and you think, oh, this is 5:15 on a Saturday. They must have looked...
Totally.
Because I guess your mum's period of the show when she was with Tom, as successful as it was, it had some of the best viewing figures the show ever had, but it was frequently criticised by people like Mary Whitehouse and other TV advocates who thought the show was getting a bit too violent. And I think, I think it's okay. But do you think Doctor Who's ever sort of crossed that line into, maybe this is a bit too much for children?
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? I mean, for me, I guess I don't know, from my children as well, like my kids love scary stuff, and like the scarier, the grosser the monster, the better.
Yeah.
So for me, I always think it's the psychological stories that kind of are the ones that I think perhaps are not more child suitable. I don't know.
Sure.
Like I can't remember the name. Is it The Empty Child?
Oh,
the one with David Tennant.
With the
gas
mask.
The little boy with the gas mask.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that is very scary, personally, and I wouldn't want my kids to watch that at the minute.
Sure.
The Weeping Angels as well. Blimey, I think.
Yeah,
that's quite because it's not always sometimes the monster that you can see, is it? It's the who's behind me, who's under the bed. I think that's more scary. I don't know. Do you think it's a bit too scary?
It's obviously I think, I started watching when I was 9 with the revival, and I must admit, having never seen a Dalek before, I did for a short time have nightmares about Dalek. But I don't think that was too scary. I think, they are, as you said, inherently scary creatures, and I think when you see them for the first time as a kid, the voice, the look, it's all into one. I think maybe there was one time where, I think it was in a Peter Capaldi story called Dark Water, where it was basically saying, where do the dead go after they die, and they play a clip which implies that the dead are still somewhat conscious, and they say things like "don't cremate me" and things like that, which of course is horrifying to hear. It later gets debunked. It's not true. It's all a ploy by Missy, the Master, etc. But I remember thinking, even at the time, I was like, maybe that I thought people are going to complain about that, for obvious reasons. I was like, this is still a family show. And it's a tough one because I don't think it crossed the line, but I think it inched maybe, very close. It was pushing it. But I can understand completely why some parents would say, I don't want my children hearing things like that, even if it is revealed to be, false or a fake or a trick or whatever. I completely understand it. So... But I think, on the whole, from what I've seen, I think they do a very good job of, towing the line and not overstepping it. Yeah, it's not like, there's not a lot of gore or anything like that.
No.
Yeah. And who doesn't love a good BBC rubber monster jumping around? That's half the fun. So would you ever be tempted then to jump into TV acting again if the situation arose, or do you think are you just going to focus on like voice acting and writing and things like that?
Sure. I mean, it's so difficult, isn't it? Because I feel like as an actor, it's so, I don't know, conceited to say, oh, you know, if a TV job came along, would I do it? Would I not? You know, I think if anything came along, you'd find a way to do it. Yeah. You'd be like, yes, I'm doing this. Where's the, you know, can you have my kids for the weekend? Right, off we go. So I think anyone would definitely say yes. But for me, I do feel a lot of contentment with the path that I've chosen, you know, getting to write and do voice work. I get to spend so much time with my kids, just like my mum did, really, which is lovely. And then maybe, you know, when I'm a bit older, in my 60s, be like Liz Smith, you know, burst onto the scene, a Mike Lee film or whatever, you know. I think that's the lovely thing though about being a creative, and if you follow a creative path, is there are no rules. You get to decide. And I think I would definitely say to anyone that wants to go down that path, you know, don't just think that there's this one set path of you've got to be, you know, the 1% that make that really big splash, because don't at all. And there's so many opportunities to have a fulfilling career doing creative stuff. So I'm happy to see where the universe takes me next, really.
That absolutely, it's a great outlook as well, because I think one thing I learned very quickly, I think still to some degree at drama school, and you know, there's this emphasis, you've always got to be in the game, so to speak. You know, you can't take any time out for any other, you know, as soon as you stop, that's it, you're not getting back in. And I've just learned that's not entirely true. You know, if you need to take 3, 6, you know, a year out for yourself, or if you want to do something else, like you can absolutely do that and then still come back and find work, if that makes sense. Like it's this horrible stigma that people say as soon as you stop, that's it, then you've shut your door, it's not opening again, and it's just not true, really. So
totally agree.
So any creatives out there, just keep going. Don't let the stigmas break you down, so to speak. And just as we come to rounding off, so is there anything that any upcoming projects you can divulge a little bit about, or is it all hush hush, sworn to secrecy? Well, which is totally fine if it is.
I'll get in terrible trouble. No, I cannot possibly say at the moment, but hopefully some fun and exciting stuff on the horizon.
No, that's fab. I mean, is there anything, as you say, you'd like to do yourself? Like any projects you'd love to tackle one day? Any like projects on the bucket list, so to speak?
Sure. Gosh, I think I've got loads, really. I would love to write and stage a play. Maybe have a production company, sort of championing kids as well. You know, my mum obviously had such a young fan base. It would be lovely to kind of support children from I guess more disadvantaged backgrounds. I think the business can be quite elitist to an extent, so I would love, if you know, as I get a bit older, to look into more of that kind of thing. I would love to write more books, do more stuff with Big Finish. I have a business called Girl Ascending, which is like my spiritual coaching business, so I would love to get more into that. So just go full out all the time.
Oh, full out all the time. My motto, really. So, keep yourself busy. No, that's fantastic. Totally. And especially, like you say, working to champion children as well, because I mean, if there's when I was in school, like we got maybe one trip to the theatre every now and then, but I've done like, you know, theatre and education work going into schools, and the amount of times, you know, performing to 13, 14-year-olds, and then the teachers will, you know, say thank you for coming in, but then they'll go, for many of them, that is the first time they've ever seen theatre, and to me, obviously, that's crazy. But it's just, sadly, you know, with various cuts to the arts, and it is difficult for kids, I think, now to get access to that world. And I think, for people like yourself trying to champion accessibility for children to the arts is important and also wonderful, because they're the next generation. They need to pick up where we leave off, whenever that is, I suppose. So no, that's
definitely. No, and there's still this, I don't know if you want to say like stigma, but I do think that people still think of theatre as a very expensive, elitist activity, and it is obviously very expensive still, for, you know, a variety of different reasons. And I think, if there were, I don't know if the National still do their £10 season, you know, where you can go and just pick up a ticket and go in. But,
I think they still do. I want to say they still do that.
I've lost track of it all now with COVID and stuff.
God, yeah.
But I think Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be great to have it be more accessible overall, definitely.
Yeah, I think stigma is the right word, because I mean I used to work front of house at a theatre that was owned by, it was a chain, it was a big corporation, so to speak, and I remember ripping tickets, and you look at some of the prices and you sort of think is it worth that much? And I know there's the cost of, you got to pay the actors, you got to pay the production staff, you've got to pay people like me who work front of, I like a paycheck as well. But some of them, I think we'd work out between ourselves like what the standard price was, and then you get a show that charged like double that, and you're like, hang on, like at this point, it's like how much of that is necessity, and then how much of that is, well, how much of that's greed, basically, sadly.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, but we still got schools coming in, but it was less. You hardly ever got schools coming to see theatre, which again is really sad, because not everyone's an academic, and I think that's another thing some people try and force on kids. It's like, no, you've got to be academic, you've got to do your maths, your science, your English, and if you're not good at that, well, tough luck, I'm afraid. But no, the arts is important, and hopefully, fingers crossed, as we come out of COVID, that it will be more prevalent to children again. I really hope so. I really hope it is.
Definitely.
No. But honestly, Sadie, thank you so much for joining me this morning. It's been a joy to speak with you, a real joy. Before you go, if there's anything you'd like to shout out, any of your socials or any of your work, please feel free to do so now.
Oh, well, if you want to follow me on social media, so it's Sadie_Lady1 is my Twitter, and then what is my Instagram? I think it's SADIE MILLER Writer VO is my Instagram. Can't even remember. Dear oh dear. I'm too old for social media, that's why. So if you want to follow me, that'd be great. And thank you so much for your time, Adam, and you've been so lovely and patient, rejigging the dates so that we could have a proper chat. So I really appreciate it. So thank you so much.
No, not a problem. If I've learned anything from doing this industry, it's that things change all the time, and there's no harm in being flexible. And I mean, with COVID, what else have we had to do? So it's absolutely fine. But no, it's been a pleasure. As I say, like, it's obviously like me and many others have been great followers and admirers of your mum's work, and now your work as well. And I really do look forward to all your upcoming projects, which I will follow and definitely give a listen to, give a watch to. It's not a problem. So all that is left to be said. Oh, I've got to do my plugs now. I always forget this. I'm like, because people say, Adam, you haven't done your plugs again. It's like, all right, yeah, okay. Breeze through them. So if you are watching on YouTube, thank you so much. Please leave a like on the video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments down below. Your feedback is always appreciated. If you're listening, hello, in the audio world, you can tune in on Spotify, on Apple, Google, anywhere you can get your podcasts. Follow, subscribe. They've all got different words for basically subscribe. I don't know why there's not a standard, but just click that button. Whatever button it is, give it a click. And thank you for listening to AMTV Radio. And Sadie, once more, thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Oh, thanks, Adam. Bye.
Bye. No worries. And to you audience members, I will see you next time.